Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a powerful story from the Gospel of John. It's about a man who waited 38 years for a miracle, but what he found was that the healing was really just the beginning. See, this isn't just a story about a cool miracle. It's about a claim to divine authority that lit the fuse on a life or death controversy.
But before we jump into the text, let's start with a question that I think gets right to the heart of this story, and maybe to the heart of our own lives too. Have you ever felt just completely and utterly stuck?
All right, so our story begins in Jerusalem, at a place called the Pool of Bethesda. Now, this wasn't some peaceful, quiet retreat. No, this place was defined by suffering and this desperate, clinging hope for a miracle. So here's the deal. The belief was that an angel would come down and stir up the water, and only the first person to get in would be healed. Can you just imagine that scene? This was not a place of quiet faith. It was a frantic, every person for themselves scramble for just one miracle. Among this huge crowd, Jesus zones in on one guy. And he'd been waiting for healing, not for a week, not for a year, but for 38 years. Just think about that for a second. That's an entire adult life defined by helplessness and this one single, desperate hope.
You know, the scripture is really specific here. It makes a point to tell us the exact length of his suffering. And that isn't just a random detail. It's meant to show us the incredible depth of his hopelessness after nearly 4 decades of waiting by that pool. And then Jesus arrives. He singles this one man out from the whole crowd, and he asks him a question that seems, well, almost too obvious, but it's actually incredibly profound. He says, "Do you want to be made whole?" And you gotta check out his response. He doesn't just shout yes. Instead, he immediately starts listing his excuses. "Sir, I have no man, when the water is troubled, to put me into the pool." He is so focused on the broken system that he's trusted for 38 years that he can't even see the real solution standing right in front of his face. And this brings us right to the command, that one moment where absolutely everything changes. The whole thing really unfolds in 3 simple parts. First, you've got the man's excuse, which is totally rooted in all his past failures. Then, you see Jesus just completely bypass all of that with a direct command. And finally, you see the man's simple, immediate obedience. Jesus just ignores all the superstitions about the pool, and the angels, and the stirring water. He doesn't offer to help the man into the pool. He speaks with creative power, giving this 3-part command that goes against everything the man has known for 38 long years. And the result? It was instantaneous. It was complete. And there's some powerful symbolism going on here. The very bed that had been a sign of his sickness, the thing that once carried him, he now carries as a trophy of his healing. Now, you'd think that's the end of the story, right? But the miracle itself sparks this massive controversy that actually reveals the true heart of the whole conflict. So when the religious leaders see this healed man, they don't celebrate, they don't marvel. Their only concern is that he's breaking their tradition by carrying his bed on the Sabbath. I mean, they were more focused on a broken rule than a restored life. When the leaders confront Jesus about this, his response is just breathtaking. He says that God the Father is always at work, sustaining the universe, giving life, even on the Sabbath. And then he adds, "And I work." Putting his own work on the exact same level as God the Father's? Whoa. And let me tell you, the leaders understood exactly what he was claiming. This wasn't about Sabbath rules anymore. This was a direct claim to be divine, to be equal with God. And for them, that was blasphemy, and it was punishable by death. Now, to back up this incredible claim, Jesus doesn't just ask them to take his word for it. No, he calls 4 unimpeachable witnesses to the stand. John the Baptist, whom they all respected, his own miracles, which they literally just saw, God the Father, who testified at his baptism, and finally, the very scriptures they spent their lives studying. So, what in the world does this ancient story mean for us today? That's the most important question of all, right? That question Jesus asked the man by the pool, it just echoes through time. It's not just some historical event. It's a personal invitation he extends to every single one of us who feels stuck or broken or hopeless. So, how do we accept this invitation? Well, the story gives us a really clear pattern. First, stop looking at the troubled waters. The excuses, the systems, the circumstances. Second, tune your ear to listen for his voice speaking through his word. And third, when he gives a command, respond with simple, faith-filled obedience. And this right here is the ultimate takeaway. The man at the pool was waiting for a system to work. He was waiting for a place to provide a miracle. Jesus showed him, and he shows us, that true, lasting wholeness isn't found in any of those things. It's found in a relationship with a person.
Jesus himself makes this incredible promise. He says that whoever hears his word and believes has, that's present tense, right now, everlasting life. They have already passed from a state of spiritual death into a state of spiritual life. It's an immediate transaction, just like the healing at the pool. So we'll end with this thought. What's the pool in your life? What excuse or circumstance or system have you been waiting by, just hoping it will finally fix you? And more importantly, are you willing to stop looking at the water and instead listen for the voice of the one who is asking you today, do you want to be made whole?